Hilchas Avadim Perik Shmini. Hamoicher is Avdei Legoyim is Yotze ben Chedin. Someone that sells his Evet Knaini, to a Goy. So the Evet Knaini is Yotze ben Chedin. Now this din that is Yotze ben Chedin is not only after he already sold him. Whereas while he's selling him to a Goy, so then he really has no right to sell him anymore, because the act of selling him, that in itself was mafkia his bailas. That was Chazal were mafkia his bailas from this Eved. And Mamela, he's like, if he's taking money from this guy for selling it to him, the money he's taking Shlei Kedin, like we'll see B'Hamshach. Because Lepel, since while he was selling him, it was Yotze ben Chedin, so therefore, B'Hamas, he had no right, there was nothing to sell. So Mamela, so this, the Kudah is that while he's selling the Evet to the guy, so the original owner loses his bailas over the Evet. This is Yotze ben Chedin. Nachamol. Hamecher is Avdei Legoyim, Yotze ben Chedin. And that's din number one. Now, Lepel, the Avid finds himself by the guy, is there's a din, as Kaifanis Rabbi, Lavzer v'leknesim nagoyim ad asara b'dam. If he has to go ahead and buy him back until pay 10 times as much as he's worth, and then the case of like get shikhr v'yetzi, he has to write him a get shikhr, because be'emes he doesn't own him anymore. In other words, when he sold him to the guy, since he was Yotze ben Chedin, so the guy really also never owned him. In other words, when a person owns something, so he could sell it. Masha'inkin over here, since Hamecher Avdei La'akum, so Memela, he never really owned his Yotze L'cheir, so he didn't really own him at the time when he was selling him. So Memela, the guy never owned him. So now when he takes him back from the guy, he doesn't own him either, because the guy never owned him, and he stopped owning him, so now he also doesn't own him. So now, but on the other end, just like we can learn Behemshach, that a mafker avdei is sort of get shikhr, because when you have an evet, which you are mafker, so maybe it's at the moment is the kedin, you no longer own him. But on the other hand, he still needs to get shikhr in order to be able to get married to a bas chedin. So Alder is over here also. So he was mecher avdei lakum, so he was yotze lecherus. He really didn't belong to the goy either, aliba de emes, but lepel it was tachas shibud agoy. Now he went ahead and got him back from the shibud agoy ad asara b'damav. So now he finds himself b'rishus of the original Eved, but b'pchinas alder v'amafker avdei, because since he sold him to the guy, he was Yotze ben Chedin. So now he has a chiv, case of get shikhr v'yetzi. Now v'im le'rotza hagoy lemochri, if the afilu b'asara b'damav, so the din is you have to buy him back even at asara b'damav. If the guy doesn't want to sell him, afilu asara b'damav, ein mechayv neisiyas. So the Chazal instituted the knas that he has to buy him back at asara b'damav, but not more. Now, uknaz, since it's a knas, and gave an eisiv v'don eisel bebezin mumchen. It's a knas that which you have to have a bezin to institute this knas, and they begoive this knas and institute that this moicher should go ahead and buy him back ad asara b'damav. That's din number one. So it's only done through a bezin mumchen that they enforce this knas, and also the imesa meicher, if the meicher is no longer around, is ein koinsinus hayoyrish lahagzas eved l'shichr. So that knas that you have to buy him back, that's en koisnos eved l'shichr. So lepeil, Marshal, let's say if the eved does buy him, if the ben does buy him back. So if the ben buys him back, so lepeil the eved is not the eved of the ben, because lepeil, since the father sold him, so memeli he was yotze lecherus. So memeli he never really belonged to the guy. So when the ben buys him back, so he has an eved which never belonged to his father, didn't belong to the guy. So it could be, I mean, the Ram Baruch writes he's not mechuyev to get shikhr for him. That's an issue, because lepel he has an eved b'rshusei, which is not really his. His father, let's say, a person would be mafkir avdei, and then he would die. So the din has to get shikhr. So the pashtus, the son also has to get shikhr. So the pashtus would be lechura that if the father sold him, so the din would be that the father has to get him back, and then get shikhr. The son doesn't have to get him back. But if lepel, the son did get him back, so lepel, he has the mitzvahs that he has an eved b'rshusei, which is mishuchrer, and he needs to get shikhr. So maybe the pashtus would be that he does have to get shikhr. But that's pashut that he can be mishtabed in the eved. That the Ram brings from the Ksav Sefer, that it's pashut that he can be mishtachar with the shtar shikhr, because lepel, since the father sold him, so at that point in time it was yotze lecherus. So mainly he no longer has any bailus over him. That's the number one. So nacham alad mecher is avdei legoy. So he's yotze lecherus, and then there's a din that he has to buy him back at asara b'damav, and that din is only till asara b'damav, and only if there's a bezin mumchen which can enforce this din, and that only goes for the father and not for the son. Halacha beis. Lava al avdei min hagoy. Person went ahead and borrowed money from a goy, and he made up a deal that it's al avdi, there's a lien, the guy has a lien on the evet. Is in kaval's man, if they made up clearly a time v'amalei im igias man pleni v'lei ashalom lecha is tikna guf evet zeh. So he told him that you have a lien, and for this and this time you'll be able to get this evet if I don't pay you. So it's keel like you sold him already. So therefore hareze yotzel lecheres miyad. So again over here we see that even though the guy doesn't have him yet, the pale it's still before the time. But the mere fact that he made up such a deal, that was a ma'asav mechira, that was like an active mechira, and because of that, he loses his right over the evet. Harezi yotzel lecheres miyad. However, v'im amalei tikne ma'asiyadav, he only said you'll be able to get his ma'asiyadav, but the gufa evet will still be mine. Is le yotzel lecheres. So if he made up that the evet is going to be yours, so then it's yotzel lecheres. If he made up a time, masha'enk, and if he only said tikne ma'asiyadav, is le yotzel lecheres. Now, Gove Goy B'choyve, it's not the pshat he made up a lien on, he borrowed money from a guy, and then the guy came along, and he took this guy, and he took this evet for his chayv. Oy, Shabo La'adim Mitzirim, Ubikshu Laharge, those people came and wanted to kill this person, the odin of this evet, Upad Atzmi Miyad Miyadi, so he gave his evet away in order to redeem himself, that they shouldn't kill him. Is again, Le'yatzel Acheres, Mipnei Shenil Kach Mimanu Shlei Berseine. So Einochanami, this Eved went from his rishus to theirs, but on the other hand, he didn't give it. So when a person gives it b'ritzeini, or a person even makes a lien on it, b'ritzeini, he makes up a time, so at that point in time, he loses his rights over the Eved, his yotzel lecheres. Masha'enkin, if he never made up such a lien on that the Eved is going to come to him at a certain time, he only made up that the Maisuyadav of the Eved will go to him, or he didn't make up Bechlal any specific time, he just borrowed money from him, and Lepel, he came and took it for his chayv, or he gave it away because he was trying to save his life. So Bechiyai Gavna, this din of Hamecher Avdi Lakum Yotzel Lecheres doesn't apply. Halacha Gimel. So before we had a case where Goyim are coming to him to kill him, and he goes ahead and he gives his evet away in order to save it. Now Macher Avdi, he didn't actually give it away in order to save himself. He was Macher Avdi Le'echad Me'avdi HaMelech in Migdalav. He sold his evet to one of the Choshev, the Avdi HaMelech or Migdalav. He's afraid of them, and maybe you could say that the reason why he sold it to them is in order that they shouldn't shepazach with him. But Lepel, there wasn't a matzav where it was sakonis lefashas, so then it's yotze avid lecheres mipnei sha'yochel lefaisim mamacher. So even though Lepel he's doing it not because he wants to sell the avid, but rather because he wants that these people shouldn't bother him. But on the other hand, he didn't have to dafke give away the avid; he could have given away something else. So in the case where Bodn Adn Mitzidin and Bikshul Hargei, and he was put the Atzmi Miyodin Be'avdei. So you don't say, why weren't you pay the Atzmi with other things? Vaishtis at that matzav, where he was being killed, he was about to be killed. So then put the Atzmi, even with the Evan, you don't say, why don't you pay yourself with something else? But over here, it's not in that matzav. It's a matzav, a general matzav, that these people he's afraid of. And mainly he wants to be Nesechem by them, that they shouldn't bother them. So here, the fact that he gave an Evan to be Nesechem by them, and not something else, and that there's a title. Why are you giving away the evet? Give away something else. That's l'chorah the pshat. Halacha dalet. Machrei legoy l'shleishim yem. He sold him to a guy, but only for 30 days. Or machrei chutz memlachta. He sold him to the guy, but he says, the work will be for me. The only legabi, the shvach is that he'll live with this person's shivcha knainis, with this one's shivcha, the guy shivcha legabi that he's selling him. Or chutz min mitzvahs, he sold him to the guy, but he made up that all the inyanim that the evet has to do mitzvahs, he shouldn't be under his domain. In other words, he shouldn't have a balabatishkeit to be able to control whether he does mitzvahs or not. Or chutz min Shabbos Yom Tov, Shabbos and Yom Tov, he's still going to be the original audience. So he's selling him a limited sale. He's not selling him a full sale. He's selling him either for Shleishim Yem, Chutz Min Malachte, Chutz Min HaMitzvahs, or Chutz Min Shabbos Yom Tov. So over here is Harez a suffix in the Shtacher Elei Shtacher. There's a suffix whether that type of a sale, we say Yotze Ben Chen, Lefichach. Since there's a suffix whether he's Nishtacher Elei Nishtacher, Im Tafes or Evet Kedei Domav L'Rabbe. In other words, if there's an Evan, in order to get out of Lecheres, L'Rabbe, he would have to pay his value. So if the Evan grabbed from the original Odin the amount of money that it would cost him to pay Kedei Dom of L'Rabbe to get out of the Rabbe, Kedei Sheyetzivem Lecheres Miyad Agoy, Ein Mitziyim Miyad, is Nachamo. Ruvain had an Evan, and he sold it, he sold this Evan to a Goy, and Lepeil, this Eved, he sold him to a guy, not a regular sale, told him chutz m'Shabbos v'yom tevim, chutz m'amitzvahs, chutz m'malachte, etc. So Lepil, right now, this Eved finds himself by the guy. The question is this Yisrael mechuyev to go ahead and redeem this Eved miyad hagoy? This L'chor is a suffix, whether he's mechuyev to redeem this Eved miyad hagoy, whether he was yotzel lecheres and he's mechuyev to redeem the Eved miyad hagoy. So the din is that if this Eved goes ahead, this Eved that finds himself now by the guy, and he grabs money from Reuven, from the original balabas, in order to redeem himself from the guy, so he goes ahead and grabs money from the original balabas to redeem himself from the guy. So then Emitzim the other, because Tfisa, the Ram always holds that when there's a suffix, he could be typhus. So Memela over here also, he could be typhus from Reuven, the money that he would need in order to get himself out of the guy. That's what the Rambam passes. Now the Medayik, the Achreinim HaMedayik, the Lechura, the Rambam only speaks about him typhus or Evet Kedei Domov. In other words, he has a certain amount he's worth, and if he grabs that amount of money and to give it to the Bailam, to the Goyish Bailam that he's by, in order to redeem himself, so then Ein Mitziyim Miyodeh. Now we learned before that the Odin is Mechuyev to be redeem him even at Kedei Eser B'Damav, 10 times as much as his value. So what happens if this guy that he's by now doesn't want to redeem him for 1 time his value, for his value? He wants 5 times his value, 10 times his value. And now this Eved goes ahead and grabs from the original Odin, from the Yid, from Reuven, he grabs him at Eser B'Damav, in order to redeem himself from the goy. Would he also be allowed to, or he wouldn't be allowed to? The Lashon Rambam is in Tafis Eved Kedei Domav. The Rambam doesn't say Kedei Domav at Kedei Asor B'Domav. So Achreinim HaMedayik, Gdei Achreinim, Tekes Mishnah, Marit, that they say like this, that be'emes, a person, in other words, there's a suffix whether or not the Odin has a chiyuv to be paid to him from the goy. That suffix, whether the Odin has a chiyuv to be paid to him from the goy, that you can't have it in tfisa. In other words, you can't have tfisa. I'm being toifers from the yid because maybe he has a chiyuv to be paid to me from the goy. If there's a suffix, if he owes me money, so then you can say your toifers money that there's a suffix, maybe it's owed to you. But over here, there's a suffix whether the Odin is mechuyev to be paid to this yid miyad goy. So the yid is going to go ahead and grab the money to be paid to himself miyad hagoy, because there's a suffix, maybe he's mechuyev. That is no din tfisa. That has nothing to do with you. That's not your money. You know, it's a chiyuv of the Odin to be paid to this Eved miyad hagoy. So the Eved doesn't really have a schus tfisa on that money. On the other end, there's another suffix. There's a suffix, maybe the money that the Yid got for him was money shalei kedin. Because Lepel, if he was yoytzel lecheres, so mele it comes out that really the guy didn't owe the Odin any money, like we learned before, that when you're selling a Yid to a guy, and the guy is paying for him, so that money is really being taken by the Yid Shalei Kedin. So Memela, now when the Yid goes ahead and grabs the money from the Avadim goes ahead and grabs the money from the original Odin, so he's grabbing money, he's saying, it's not so clear that it's your money. Because Lepel, the Odin, really didn't have to give you the money. And Lepel, as a result of you getting this money, I'm a ben chayrin. So that money is allowed to grab. That's how they explain it. So also it's tzarich, you have to understand. Because l'chura, it's certainly not the Eved's money. But on the other hand, since the Odin got the money for giving away the Eved, and Lepel, he really wasn't supposed to get that money. So now the Eved could go ahead and take this money, Ki'ilu Neimazog, that the guy really didn't have to give you this money. So now, and the only reason, and because the guy gave you this money, so I'm now by the guy. So I'm going ahead and grabbing from you the money to get out of the guy. Is nachamol. So the Yid sold this Eved to a guy, and there is a suffix whether or not there was a valid sale, because he's Yotze ben Chayrin, and the money that the guy gave was really proper money or not. So the din is that the Eved could go ahead and take this money that's lying by the original Odin and grab it and give it to the guy in order to get himself out ben chayrin. But for the Yid to go ahead and grab ad eser b'damav in order to get himself ben chayrin, that there's no din tfisa for. Halacha hey. Echad moicher avdei l'goy eved avidah zara. So this din that ha-moicher is avdei l'goy is yotze ben chayrin is lav davki echad ha-moicher avdei l'goy eved avidah zara. Even if he's selling him to a ger tesher is someone that was makabel on himself, Sheva mitzvahs b'nei neach. Afilu Lakuti. Not only to an Eved Avzor, Afilu Lakuti, which has the Chadin of Goyim, like the Ram said before. So the din is Harezi Yotzel Lecheres, so the Eved is Yotzel Lecheres. Mochre Yisrael Mummer. Now, if someone owns an Eved Knaini and he sold him to a Yisrael, but that Yisrael is a Yisrael Mummer. So therefore, that's Harezi Sofik. It's a Sofik whether or not there's the din of Yotzel Ben Chayden, and again, it's talking about the same Sofik, if he's Mechuyev, to go ahead and bring him back at Asar B'Dama. V'lefichach, im Ktofas Kedei Dam of Mirabi Rishon, Kedei Lotzes Ben Miyadam Mummer is again Ein Mitziyim Miyadam. So the same thing, just like we learned before, when he sells him to a guy, and it's like a limited sale. So over there, the shaila is whether or not it's Yotzel Ben Chayden, and the whole shaila whether it has the din of Amecher Avdei L'Goy. So the same shaila applies when Amecher Avdei L'Yisrael Mummer. So that's din number one. So this is the first 5 halachas is talking about Amecher Avdei La'akum. So he's Yotzel Ben Chayden, and he has to go ahead and buy him back Ad Asara B'Domav, and he has to write him a get shich. Halacha Vav. Amecher Avdei L'Chutz La'aretz is Yotzel Ben Chayden. So new din that a person that sells his Eved to Chutz La'aretz to a Yid is Yotzel Ben Chayden. So over here, the Yotzel Ben Chayden means that he actually sold him, and he belongs to the Rabbi Sheni. And now, from the Rabbi Sheni, he's Yotzel Ben Chayden. And therefore, v'keifnis Rabbi Hasheni lichtiv leget shichur. The sale was a valid sale, but on the other end, after the Rabbi Hasheni bought him, so Mele is keifnis Rabbi Hasheni lichtiv leget shichur. And v'avdu Adam. And the Rabbi Hasheni loses the money. So the knas over here is not on the Rabbi Rishon, it's on the Rabbi Sheni. Why was the knas instituted on the Rabbi Sheni and not on the Rabbi Rishon which sold him? So the whole Yotzel L'Chutz was because the Rabbi Hasheni wanted to buy him, although the Rabbi Rishon who sold him. But Lepil, the Rabbi Rishon says doesn't bother him. He wouldn't mind if the Rabbi Hasheni comes and lives in Eretz Yisrael. The Lepil, this Rabbi Hasheni, which lives in Chutz La'aretz, and he's taking him out from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, he's buying him. So therefore, he's the one that's chayiv the knas. You have to understand, the Rabbi Rishon is also doing an avla, the fact that he's selling him to this Rabbi Hasheni. Then the Ram continues, Hamecher Avdei L'Surya, V'afilu La'akum, is Kemecher L'Chutz La'aretz. So we have a din, Hamecher Avdei L'Chutz La'aretz is Yotzel L'Cheres, and now there's another din that Hamecher Avdei L'Surya, or La'aku, has a din as if he's Mecher L'Chutz La'aretz. Halacha Zayin. Ben Bovel, Shenose Isha B'Eretz Yisrael. He went ahead and married a woman in Eretz Yisrael, V'daite Lachzer, and his intent is to go back to Bovel. And Lepeil is Echnisole Ishte Avadim Mishvachas. The wife owned Avadim Mishvachas. Now, by her getting married to him, she's like giving over the Avadim Mishvachas to someone that lives in Chutz La'aretz. By her marrying him, she's saying, Amecher Avdei L'Chutz La'aretz is Yotzel L'Chaydim. Now, by her marrying him, so those Avadim Mishvachas are going to be transferred to him. So Memela, so L'Chura, she's transferring to Chutz La'aretz. So the din is Harei L'Sofik. Imheim Kimi Shemachra Isim L'Chutz La'aretz. Hail v'yeshli aperes, since he has the peres. So the Lashon Rambam really sounds like we're talking about Nichsi Malug. Talking about Nichsi Malug, which the Nichsi Malug are, the guf is hers, and the peres are the husband's. So since he has the schus in those peres, so Mamela there's a svara to say that it's kilo he was meichel l'chutz la'aretz, because now he has a full schus on all those peres. That's the pashtus l'chur Lashon Rambam. The Ramara brings from there Sameach that he's saying that if it would be Nichsi Malug, for sure it wouldn't be Kemecher L'Chutz La'aretz, because since it's only Peres. Masha'inkin over here we're talking about Nichsi Sein Barzel, and even again Nichsi Sein Barzel, since Sof Kol Sof, if they're Be'en, so they go back to her. So Memela it's not a full sale, and since it's not a full sale, so that's why there's a suffix whether or not it has a din Kemecher L'Chutz La'aretz. It's a Chiddush in Pshat. I mean, he has rayas to this Chiddush, but I'm saying when you read the Lashon Rambam, the Pashtos, it sounds like that Echnisli Ishte Avadim Mishvachas. The Ram doesn't say what happened. How was Echnisli Ishte? Doesn't say there was Nichsi Sein Barzel, and it says that the payers are his and the guf is hers. So it sounds like we're talking about Nichsi Milug, not Nichsi Sein Barzel. Halacha Ches. Eved Sheyotza Acher Rabbi L'Surya. So the Eved, the Rabbi went to Surya, and the Eved went with the Rabbi L'Surya in his own free will, and as he went with the Rabbi L'Surya, he didn't object. And Lepeil, once they were in Surya, it was Mochrisham. The rabbi went ahead and was Moicher this Eved in Syria. So the din is Ibn Schusay. So since the Eved came to Syria, whereas when an Eved finds himself with the rabbi in Eretz Yisrael, and now the rabbi went ahead and sold him to Syria, so we said that if you sold him to Syria, it's like you sold him to Chutzlars. Meil is Yetzel Lecheres. But over here, the Eved went already to Syria, so he wasn't already in Eretz Yisrael. So since he's Yotza Acher Rabbi L'Syria, so then is Ibid Schusay. B'amed Dvarim Amurim K'sheyotza Rabbi Al Menashe Le'Laz L'Eretz Yisrael. Whereas the rabbi was moving to Syria, wherever he was moving, and the Eved went along with him, so the Eved is no longer in Eretz Yisrael, even by the Rabbi Yishim. Aval Das Rabbi Lachzer, the Yotza Achrev Machzeh. The rabbi didn't go to move to Syria. He was traveling through Syria, and the Eved went with him, and then the rabbi went ahead and took this Eved, which was with him in Syria, which really they both live in Eretz Yisrael, and he sold him to Syria. So that is Yotza Lecheres. And the Kefen is Alikech Shachri has the same din. V'amecher Avdei L'chutz La'aretz is Yotza Lecheres, and Kefen is Rabbi Hasheni L'Shachri. Halacha Tes. Eved she'omar la'alis l'Eretz Yisrael. So you have an Eved which is in Chutz La'aretz with his rabbi, and he says he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. So the din is Kefen is Rabbi la'alis imei. So the rabbi, either he has the option, he wants to keep him as an Eved, so then he has to come with him to Eretz Yisrael. And knows an Eved has a right to say, I want to be in Eretz Yisrael. So if now he's by the rabbi, and the rabbi is in Chutz La'aretz, so either the rabbi should come with him to Eretz Yisrael, or there's another Eitzah, Yim Kereisi L'Mishi Yalu Misham. So he sells him to a Yid, which is going to be Mailim to Eretz Yisrael. In other words, an Eved has a right to Taina, I want to be in Eretz Yisrael. He's an Eved of a rabbi in Chutz La'aretz, he has a Taina, he wants to be in Eretz Yisrael, and the rabbi has either the choice to come with the Eved to Eretz Yisrael, or to sell him to someone that's going to bring him to Eretz Yisrael. Now, Rotza ha'adon lotzis l'chutz la'aretz. Nudin, an adon that lives in Eretz Yisrael, and he wants to go to chutz la'aretz. Eine yochel le'etzis abdi ad she'yirtza. Unless the Eved is willing to go with the adon to chutz la'aretz, the adon could insist where the Eved goes, that the Eved comes with him. But over here, since the adon is going from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz, he can't insist that the Eved comes with him. Ad she'yirtza v'din zeh b'chol zman afil b'zman hazeh. Sha'ar biad goyim, but nevertheless, if you own an Eved and you live in Eretz Yisrael and you want to go to Chutz La'aretz, the Adam wants to go to Chutz La'aretz, so the din is the Eved could object and say, I don't want to go to Chutz La'aretz. So that's this din that you're not allowed to sell an Eved to Chutz La'aretz, and you can't insist that an Eved comes with you to Chutz La'aretz. In other words, an Eved has a right to insist that he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. He has insisted he wants to stay in Eretz Yisrael, and he can even insist that he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. That's this din. Halacha Yud. Eved sheborach michutz la'aretz. You have an Eved that was in Chutz La'aretz. He was owned by an Odin in Chutz La'aretz. And Lepel, he ran away from this Odin, and now he's in Eretz Yisrael. So normally an Eved runs away from the Odin, so you're supposed to give him back to the Odin. He's the chush of the Odin. Masha'inkin over here, when he ran away from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, and we said before, an Eved has a right to want to go to Eretz Yisrael, so the din is ein machzin le'lavdus. You don't bring him back to the Odin in Chutz La'aretz. You don't give him back to the Yodin of Chutz La'aretz. V'olav nema lisazger eved al adenov. On such a case, the pasuk says lisazger eved al adenov, which means don't give back an eved which ran from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. Give him back to his Odin which is in Chutz La'aretz. Ve'ema l'Rabbi, you could say in he could tie it to the Rabbi, the eved, that sheyichtiv le'get shikhr. And however, v'yichtiv le'shtachev b'domov. But the Eved, in other words, if the Odin is riding Mishtash Shikhr, like we had before, so now the Eved has to pay for the Shikhr. He has to pay for the Shikhr. He doesn't have any money now. But on the other, he can insist that he should get a Shtar Shikhr, and he'll write a Shtar Chev saying that he owes the money, whatever he's worth. For the Shikhr, that's why he owes the money to the Odin. If the Odin doesn't want to be Meshachrin, the din is that the Odin, you tell the Odin to be Meshachrin. Mafkiya Bezin Shibudim Yolov. So Bezin is Mafkiya, his Shibud from him. Whereas he has no longer a Shibud on him, like we said before, is Yotzel Lecheres. And Lepel V'yelichle, and the Eved is Yelichle. The question is, Lechur, is this Eved allowed to get married to a Basker? And those Lechur, normally an Eved is not allowed to get married to a Basker unless he has a Shtar Shikhr. Over here, it was Kef in this rabbi to write a Shtar Shikhr. But over here, Lepel, it doesn't say over here Kef in this rabbi. You know, this Eved ran away to Chutz La'aretz, so you're not allowed to give him back to the rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. He could tie it to the rabbi that he wants him to write a Shtar Shikhr. If the rabbi doesn't want to write a Shtar Shikhr, so the din is Mafkiyim Bezin Shibudim Yolav Yelichle. But L'chura doesn't say that he has a din of a ben chayrin. Now over here, be'emes is muter b'shivcha. So by the case where chasi eved chas ben chayrin is keif misrabi to rather get shikhr, because or else he can't be mekayim Mrs. Peri v'rivya. But over here, he's, even though he no longer has a shibur of the odin, but since he has a din of an eved, so he's muter b'shivcha. So mele, the din of koifen, which we had before by chasi shivcha v'chasi ben chayrin, wouldn't apply over here by this eved, which is be'emes from a shibudik aspect. He's free, but on the other end, he still has the din of an eved. It's not the issues the kedin. Halacha Yudalev eved zeh shebarach la'aretz. Now the ma'ase is we're learning behamshach to this din that mefkia bezin shibudi Allah v'yelachlei. So it would sound like bepashtos that Halacha Yudalev is coming mamish to the end of Halacha Yud. This eved which ran away to chutz la'aretz and he didn't get a shtar shikhr and bezin was mafkia shibudi mi'olav. But as we just said, that l'chura, an eved that was barach l'chutz la'aretz and he didn't get a shtar shikhr, be'emes still has the din of an eved knaini. He doesn't have a din of a ger tzedek. And memela l'chura, how could you say hareo ger tzedek? And therefore the Kiryat Sefer learns that be'emes it's talking about an eved zeh shebarach l'chutz la'aretz and he did receive a shtar shikhr. But l'peil, since he was once an eved, so memela there's a din of a ger and there's a din of an eved that became a ger. Now, that's how he learns in Pshat. Since he's an eved that became a ger, so therefore he's more of a shuffle than a regular ger, because he was an eved, and therefore, so there's special dinim, there's an extra din that applies to hurting him, as we'll learn b'hamshach. That's how the achreinim learn. The problem is that l'chura, if that's the case, why is dafka eved zeh shebarach la'aretz? Every eved that became a meshuchrer, there should be this din. Because Lepel, since he was once an Eved, it's not so clear. In other words, if we're talking about this Eved Zeshabarach Lechutzlos and didn't get a Shtar Shikhr, is Shver, how is he a Ger? Elamai, we're talking about an Eved that did get a Shtar Shikhr. So why are we talking about Dafka Eved Zeshabarach La'aretz? Why don't we talk about every Eved that with Lepel got a Shtar Shikhr? It's the same. Either way, it's like a little bit hard to understand Pshat. Halacha Yudalef. Eved Zeshabarach La'aretz is Harehu Ger Tzedek. First, he's a Ger Tzedek. And also, v'hoysev le'akosev azhor acheres l'mi shema anoisei mipnei shu shval ruach yesem en ager. So he's a shval ruach yesem en ager. So therefore, someone that hurts him, shema anoisem that hurts him, so that person, so there's an extra lav for hurting such an eved which is barach la'aretz, more than the lav for a regular ger. V'tziva le'akosev shenamar im choyeshe b'kirbecha ba'achar sha'arecha. So lei teinanu is going on this eved, which is barach l'chutz la'aretz, and as we're saying from the Kiryat Sefer, and he received the shtar shikhr, but lepel, since he once was an eved, so therefore he's a shval ruach, and therefore there's an extra love of lei teinanu. And zu afei noyas dvarim. This din of lei teinanu refers not only to Einos moment, but also to Einos dvarim. Nimtzas lomet. So it comes up a pale. Shama'anis hager hazeh, someone that's ma'ana, this ger, which was once an eved, and he was barach la'aretz, is aver b'shlei shalavim. He's aver on the shlei shalavim, mishum v'leiseinu isha samisei, which goes on every yid, leiteinu, the isereino, and also mishum v'ger leiseina, there's another lav, that you're not allowed to be ma'ana a ger, you're not allowed to be ma'ana a ger, and also mishum leiteinanu, that also applies to this special ger that was a eved shebarach b'chutz la'aretz, or as we're saying, every eved that became a meshuchrer, so that there's a special lav. So there's three lav: l'seinu isha samisei, which goes on every yid; mishum v'ger l'seinu, which goes a special lav for a ger, and also mishum l'seinenu. And then the chen aver mishum v'lei silchatzenu k'mishum b'yarnu b'inyan heino. Now over there, really, we learned in Hilchos Hino that every time when a person is ma'ana a ger, so he's over on two lav. In other words, there's an isser by a yid. There's two lav. There's an isser eino by Einos dvarim, and there's also an isser of Einos moment. Two separate lav. So if you have Einos dvarim, you're over on the isser of Einos dvarim, and by Einos moment, you're over on the isser of Einos moment. By a ger, there's also two lavim. Over there it says liseinu ger liseina. And it also says v'lei silchatzenu. Chazal learn leisenu means Einos dvarim, and v'lei silchatzenu goes on Einos moment. And we learn out of limud that whenever you ma'ana a ger, you're over on three lav. So in other words, any ger yamana, whether yamana inoas dvarim or inoas mammon, you're always eva on 3 lav. You're eva on the lav of whatever the lav is for a yid, and then you also eva on both lavim by a ger. Saili seina v'lisel chatzenu. The Ram made the cheshbon before that you always eva 3 lavim. Now l'chura over here you also over on an extra lav, which is leiseinenu, which is a new lav for a ger that was once an Eved and became the Shtachra through Eved Shabarach Bechutz L'Eretz Yisrael. So l'chura, when the Rambam is saying B'chein Eved Mishum Leisel Chatzenu, he means to say that since he's a ger, and we learned before that by a ger, even by a Noaz Dvarim, you also Eved Leisel Chatzenu. So Mela Be'emes, when you ma'ana this ger, you're over on 4 lav, not on 3 lav. You're over on the lav of Liseinu Istish Samisa, and then you're over Mishum V'ger Liseina, and you're over Mishum Liseinenu, this extra lav, and also by every ger, you're over also Sayan Liseinu, Sayan Liseinu Chatzenu. It's not so clear. Some people want to learn V'chein Eva Mishum Liseinu Chatzenu in a case where you're ma'anin with Mammon, there's 2 cases over here in the Rambam. It's not so clear. And also the kasha is, why does the Rambam say 3 lavim? The Rambam should have said 4 lavim. So the Rambam is like saying, the pshat is there's like 3 in yonim over here. This person is first of all a yid, and secondly he's a ger, and thirdly he's this person that was barach la'aretz. So there's 3 separate parshas for him. There's one, Liseinu Rishon Samisei, and then there was another parsha of a ger Liseinu, and then there's a 3rd parsha of Leis Teinanu. That's a 3rd parsha. Now the Rambam is saying it. We learned that by a ger you're over sai by Noas Dvarim, sai by Noas Mam you're over on both lavim. So that's what he's saying. Halacha Yud Beis. Hakoyne Eved min Hagoyim Stam. Now, when a Yid owns an Evet Knaini, there's 2 madregas in the kinyan. There's the Mammon is the kinyan, and there's the Isadika kinyan. Like we learned by Hamshech, and we mentioned already that the Isadika kinyan only comes off through a Git Shichr. If a person is Mafker Avdei, so he loses his Mammon is the Kabbalas on the Evet, but on the other end, the Isadika Kabbalas, which could only come off through a Git Shichr. So if the Evet is Yotzeh through Kesef, so when he's Yotzeh B'Kesef, he's Yotzeh aside from the Mammon is the Kashibud, and also from the Isser the Kashibud. There's a Eved is Kenes Atzmi B'Kesef, so he becomes a Ben Chayrin. He doesn't need a Shtar Shechur. Masha'enkin, if the Yid was Mafker him, so then he doesn't really become a Ben Chayrin. He becomes a Ben Chayrin in the sense that the Yid no longer has the Mammon is the Kashibud on him, but on the other end, the din of Evet Knaini that he has, that only comes off through the fact that he gets a Get Shechur. That's din number 1, which we already learned. Now there's another Nakuda, which is that there's a chiluk between the kinyan of a Yid in a Goy, as opposed to the kinyan of a Goy in a Goy. Because when one Goy owns another Goy, so he doesn't really own the goof of the Goy. He doesn't have a right to have a bailus in the goof of the Goy. He only has a very strong shibud on his Maisi Yodav, because he has a kinyan in him for all his Maisi Yodav, but it's not gufi koni mamish to the Goy. Masha'enkin, when a Yid owns an Evet Knaini, so that Evet Knaini becomes the Yid's not only that he has a shibur on his Maisi Yodav, but his guf mamish becomes koni. You know, even in the kinyan mameni gufa, there's also a difference between the Yid's kinyan mameni and the Goy's kinyan mameni. Now, lepel, when a Goy sells a Goy to a Yid, one Goy owns another Goy, and he sells that Goy, his Evet, to a Yid. So at that point in time, all the Yid has really is what the Goy had. The Goy originally had only a shibur on his work, so now the Yid also gets the shibur on his work. But Lepel, a Yid is not supposed to have a Goy and an Oifan that he only has a shibur on his work. He's supposed to make him into an Evet Knaini. So there's a din that he has to make him into an Evet Knaini, which means that he's going to become Gufi Koni, and he's also going to have the dinim of an Evet Knaini. Masha'enkin, but you can't make him into an Evet Knaini Agedrtzeni, because an Evet Knaini is a certain madreg of Gerus. So that has to be Beratzon Evet. So that's what we'll learn over here by Hemshech. Halacha Yud Beis. Hakoyne Evet min Hagoyim Stam. A person goes ahead, there's a Goy that has an Evet, and now, which we said, the Evet of a Goy is not really owned in the Eifon of Gufi Koni, he only has like a shibud on his Maisi Yodav. And now the Yid is buying this Evet from the Goy. Hakoyne Evet min Hagoyim Stam. And Lepel, this Eved is Leirotza Lomel. He doesn't want to go through Milo, Lekabel Mitzvahs Avadim. And the question is, so the din is, Megalgal and Ime Kol Shnei Masar Chedesh. So you could hold him for 12 months and try to persuade him that he should become a din of an Evet Knaini. However, Vim Leiratze, if he doesn't want to become a din of an Evet Knaini, so then it's Chayzri and Moichel Goyim, you can sell him back to the Goyim. So although we learned before, you're not allowed to sell an Evet Knaini to a Goy. But over here, he doesn't have yet a din of an Evet Knaini. He just has the kinyan that he got from the Goy. The Goy had a kinyan, a shibud on his Maisi Yadav, and now the Yid bought that shibud. Now he's giving back that Goy to the Goy. So he's selling them back. He doesn't have all these dinim of an Evet Knaini, of a Mecher Evet Knaini, which is usher to sell to a Goy, usher to sell to Chutzlars. And this is only he could hold on for 12 months. However, he made the deal that when he's buying this Evet, he's saying that he's buying this Evet and he's only going to have Maisi Yadav, and he's not going to really have this Kinyan Haguf and eventually become a real Evet Knaini. So then is Areza Mutter Lekaim because Mashayir Sabig Yusei. The Goy could remain a Goy and not an Evet Knaini, and the Yid could still own him. In other words, if you buy a Goy Stam and you didn't make a Tnai Lechatchila, that's how you're buying it, so then you have to only be Megalgal Shnei Masar Chedesh and you shouldn't be holding on to him. Masha'enkin, if Lechatchila was Ageret, that you're only buying him for the din of the, in other words, basically you're really buying him. And you're having that kinyan that the Goy had in him, you're having in him. You're not having the kinyan that a Yid is able to have it in an Evet. You're having the kinyan that a Goy had in the Evet. So you could continue having that kinyan, what the Goy had in the Evet, and you could go ahead and sell this Evet, which is not really the din of Evet Knaini. He's a Goy which you own, so you could sell him to Chutzlars because he doesn't have a din of an Evet Knaini. That's this din. Now we'll see Behamsha. The Rambam says this din of Akena Eved min Hagoyim Stam. What happens if a Goy sells himself? If a Goy sells himself to the Yid, so there's a svara to say that since the Goy sold himself to the Yid, so the Yid mamish became a kinyan on his gufay, and then you could even be Megayer in Balkarche, which we'll learn Behamsha. But I'll call upon him, that's the din. If a Yid buys an Eved from a Goy, that a Goy owns an Eved, so if he buys him stam, so then he could be he's and he doesn't want to become a ger, an Evet Knaini. So you wait for 12 months, and at that point in time you sell him back to the goy with the chutzlaretz. And if you made up a tanai, so again, he can remain a goy. You could have an Evet, which is really a goy. He's not an Evet Knaini, and you have kinyonim on him similar to the kinyonim that the goy had on him. And you could, and there's no dinim, there's no agbolas about selling him to chutzlaretz, about selling him to goy. Now this din is only if the Eved is Mekabel himself Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Neach and becomes a Ger Teishav. In other words, to hold a Goy, which is not Mekabel himself Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Neach, and he's not, and he's Eved Avodah Zarah, so the din is Yeharik, which we learned by him. We learned, Rambam says it in Hilchas Milah. But I'll call upon him, this din is if, Legab, in other words, we're talking about a Goy that's Mekabel Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Neach. Could you keep him in your house? So again, if you buy an Eved from a Goy, so the first 12 months, if he doesn't want him in Mekabel Evet Knaini, you could keep him and then you have to sell him. But if you made up the Tnai Lechatchila, so then you could keep him as long as you want. V'chein, Evet Shemol V'Tova L'Shem Avdos, an Evet that Taka became a proper Evet Knaini, and Lepel V'achar Kachipol Atzmul Geisis, he went to the army, so to speak, L'Geisis to Chayolim. V'ein Rabbi Yochel Eitzieh Le'Bedin Yisrael Le'Bedin Yisrael. There's no way of this Rabbi getting this Evet Knaini back. So now, but on the other hand, the goyim are willing to pay for him, that they should own him. Normally, you're not allowed to sell an Evet Knaini to a goy, but over here, if he doesn't sell the Evet Knaini to the goy, the pale is not going to have the Evet Knaini by himself, and he's also going to lose the money. So the din is Harei Zem Mutter LeLittle Domen HaGoyim. He's allowed to take the money from the goyim. And the case of Umayla Berkoy Shel Goyim Upnei Shukamatzel Miyadim, because Lepel, since he already lost this Evet Knaini, normally to take Evet Knaini that you have, that's B'Shus Yisrael, and to give it B'Shus Goyim, you're not allowed to. Masha'inkin over here, since he's already B'Shus Goyim, the question is only to make it legally theirs, and you're going to get paid for it, so that's Kimatzel Miyadim, and then you're allowed to do it. So basically, in this halacha we're learning that there's a hechatimsa of being able to sell your Eved to a Goy in the case where he never became an Evet Knaini, and then there's a case where you could sell your Evet to a Goy even if he became an Evet Knaini, if he was hipolatzma legaises, and you're not able to be made sim lebedin Yisrael lebedin Yaakov. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hamafter Avdei is Yotzel Lecheres. So Yotzel Lecheres in the sense that you lost your kinyan mameni over him. But on the other end, the Tzara gets Shichur, which we mentioned a lot of times, that Tzara gets Shichur Lepel, since he's an Evet Knaini, and he's also in a Yid, and he's Mutter B'Shivcha, so he needs to get Shichur in order to lose that kinyan Isser. That din Isser of an Evet Knaini you could only lose, that can't happen through Hefker. That only happens through a Shtar Shichur. Again, it can happen through kinyan Kesef. But once there was Mafkar Avdei, there's no option of Kinyan Kesef. Kinyan Kesef means he's giving you the money that so to speak he owes to you, but you have no Kinyan Mameni in him anymore. You only have a Kinyan Isser. So at this point in time, the only way of taking off this Kinyan Isser is through a Shechur. Now V'mesa Odin Shif Kirei, so then as a Yerush case like get Shechur, the Yerush still owns the Kinyan Isser. He Yashes, even though the father lost the Kinyan Mameni. But Lepel, the din of the Evet Knaini that belongs to the father, that he could have written a get shikr, the son Yashin, now the Ben Ayerish is capable of get shikr. Halacha Yudalit. Eved sheborach mibeso asur. So you have an Eved that was in prison, and he ran away from prison. Now the question is, im this Ya'ish men Rabbi, if the Rabbi was misyayish from this Eved, so the din is Yotzel Lecheres, because just like Yush is hefker, causes the thing should be hefker. So the Eved was koines atzmei through the fact that the Odin was miyayish. Now, if he ran away from the Odin himself, and then the Odin was miyayish, so then the Chazal were masak, and that he shouldn't be able to became himself. The Lechuri should also be able to became himself. So of course, the Odin was miyayish. But then, in order to avoid people running away from the Odin. But over here, he was already in a Beis Asur, and Lepel ran away from the Beis Asur. So in the Siyayish Men Rabbi, so then is Yotzel Lecheres. And the Kefenis Rabbi, over here is Kefenis Rabbi, the case of Leit Get Shichus. In the case of a Mafkar Rabbi, he did it on his own. It doesn't say Kefenis Rabbi, Tzorah Get Shichus. Masha'ikon over here, since he was in a Beis Asur, and Lepel, the Rabbi was Messiah, so Mela, like the Shichur came Be'if Mishel Mela. So now the din is that Kefenis Rabbi, and he has to write him and get Shichur. Halacha Tezvov. Eved Shenishba. You have an Eved that was taken into captivity. There's a Im Nisyayish Menu Rabbi Rishon. If the Rabbi Rishon was Nisyayish Menu, so Mela Be'etzem, again, the Kinyam Ameni he lost. Is Kol HaPei De'esi L'Shem Eved. Whoever wants to be paid him L'Shem Eved, he has a say Be'etzem als Mitzias of who he is. He's an Evet. He's an Evet Knaini. But he's an Evet Knaini, in others, he's still Tzorah Get Shichur. But on the other hand, the Rabbi, since he was Messiahish from him, so Mele, he lost the right to be Mishtabed with him. So now if someone else goes ahead and he's paid him, so like he's being koine that Kinyan Mameni in him, and Mele, so he's able to be Mishtabed by. Kol HaPei De'esel Shem Eved, Yishtabed by B'arei Shalei. So he's his. So now, knows the Mahus, knows he's an Evet Knaini, but he's an Evet Knaini that now has a new owner. So even though we learned before that when a person is an Evet Knaini, so he really belongs to the original owner to the extent where the Yoirish is going to yashin that Evet Knaini. But over here, there's a Hechatim, so we have an Evet Knaini, and he's in that captivity. The original Bailam were Messiahish from the Kinyan Mameni in this Evet Knaini, but on the other hand, someone else could go ahead and assume this Kinyan Mameni, and Lepel, he still remains an Evet Knaini, but an Evet Knaini of the new owner. That's talking about if he was paid the Eisei L'Shem Evet. However, when Podol L'Shem Ben Chedin, he was paid L'Shem Ben Chedin, is that Eisei Ben Chedin. Now the Maisa, the Rambam doesn't write over here that he's going to have to write a Shachur. The Rambam brings from a Raj Ben Gittin that the Rajba says in Gittin that he'll have to write a Shachur, L'chura. In other words, just like we're learning the whole time, I'm Afkar Avdei or Evet Shabarach, he needs to get Shachur. So over here also, this Eved was Nishba, and Lepel, someone went ahead and was paid to this Eved, so Lepel, he has a din of a Ben Chedin. He has a din of a Ben Chedin, but on the other, he needs a Shtar Shechur. So you have to know why doesn't the Rambam write it, but I'll call upon L'chura that the Pashtus Advar. That's talking about if the Rabbi Arishan was in Siyayish. However, if Imlei Nisyayish men or Rabbi Arishan, if his Rabbi Arishan was never Misyayish, is a paid the Eisel L'Shem Eved, Natal Pidyeini Mirabbi. So the person that's paid this, so this Eved really belongs to the Rabbi, and he was never Messiah. So he has side the Kinyan Romanian, the Indian Isser, he's an Evet Knaini, a regular Evet Knaini, but he's in captivity. Now someone comes along, and he was paid the Isser from the captivity. So Lepel, the Rabbi, has to pay him the money. So Noitel Pidjeni Rabbi, the Chezel Rabbi. However, Vin Padol L'Shem Ben Cheren, the Rabbi was never Messiah, and this person was paid him L'Shem Ben Cheren, is also Chezel Rabbi Rishon, because Lepel is owned by the Rabbi Rishon, aber B'lei Klum, he doesn't have to pay him. Whereas if you're being paid him L'Shem Avdos, but Lepel, since he can't be his own Eved, he can be his Eved, because Lepel he was never Messiah, so that the original Rabbi has to pay the Poida. Masha'inkin, if it was Padei or L'Shem Ben Cheren, so he still belongs to the original Rabbi, because Lepel he was never Messiah. But on the other hand, he doesn't owe him any money, because he wasn't paid him in order for him to be an Eved, he was paid him to be a Ben Cheren. Halacha Tezayin. Eved Shaso Rabbi Apeitikil Balchevi. So a person has a Balchevi, a Yiddish Balchevi. And he made his Eved and Apeitiki that the shibud of the Chayv should be on the Eved. In other words, if Lepel he owes him the money, he doesn't have to pay him. So so the shibud of the Balchev is going to be on this Eved. And Lepel b'shichrei, the Odin was Meshachar the Eved. So the din is Hareza Meshuchar. Lepel is Meshuchar. So even though this Balchev has a shibud on the Eved, but Lepel is Meshuchar. That's Shichr is Meitz Midei Shibud. The Kefen is Balchev the Shachrei. But Lepel, your Kefen the Balchev the Shachrei, that's only not because Lepel he belongs to the Balchev. Lepel he belongs to the original Odin. Memela, when he was Meshuchar through the original Odin, he's Taka Meshuchar. Why did they institute the Balchev the Shachrei? Gamzem Pnei Tikkun Elam. So in order for the Balchev not to be able to meet the Eved and say, listen, you're really my Eved because I had a shibud on you, and the fact that your Adon was Mshachar, but he was making my shibud, but really I have a shibud on you. So therefore Chazal insisted that this Balchev should write a shtar shichr to the Eved in order for the Balchev not to be able to tell to this Eved, to the person that was originally an Eved, Avdiyata. Halacha Yud Zayin. So we learned that if a person is mafkir avdei, so Lepel, since he was a mafkirim, so he loses like his kinyan mameni. But Lepel, the Eved is still an Eved Knaini. Knows the goof of the Eved has a din of an Eved Knaini, and in order for him to become Mamash ben Cheren, is Sarah ben Shichr. So over there we're talking about a mafkir avdei. He said clearly Areu Hefker. Now we're learning that even if he didn't actually say Areu Hefker, but he did things or he said things which is mashma, that he's considering him a ben cheren, so that's also a gather of hefker. That's also a lashon which causes an inyan of hefker. And Mamela becomes a din of a eved shef kiri rabbi, and Mamela surrogate shikhr. That same din of an eved shef kiri rabbi surrogate shikhr would apply if the rabbi did something or said something which indicates that he's looking at him no longer as an eved but as a ben cheren. Halacha Yud Zayin. Eved shehisiyei rabbi bas cheren. The rabbi married him off to a baschen, which are all things which you only do to a regular ben chen. He told him to lay in the Torah, in shul. He did things to him which only a ben chen would do, and as a rabbi, and as marrying a baschen is only something which a ben chen could do. And now there is it to put on tefillin, only a ben chen does. Eved is only mechuyev mitzvahs kiisha. And now there is that to read in the Torah. Is all of these things are yotzel cheres, because that's ki'ilah like he was mafker him, and the kefen is rabbi lichtliv get shikhr, because a mafker of this is sorry get shikhr, and over here is kefen is rabbi lichtliv get shikhr. Before the Rambam didn't really say the lashon kefen is rabbi. Over here the Rambam says kefen is rabbi lichtliv get shikhr. V'chein im nodar neder shekefen always avadim k'mishbiyani b'nedarim. The din is if an Eved makes a neder, so the Odin could go ahead and be koy for the Eved to be over on this neder, because he had no right to make a neder, because a person can't make a neder on himself if he doesn't own himself. Normally a person owns himself, he can make a neder on himself. But an Eved, since he's b'shus adene, so he doesn't have a right. So mainly the Odin could go ahead and force the Eved to tell him to eat, or to tell him to do things against his neder. And Lepel, instead of the rabbi going ahead and forcing the Eved to violate his neder, is Amali Rabbi Mufalach, which is something you would say to a regular Yisrael, which is making a nether. So you're telling him mufarlach. In other words, you're not exercising your right as an eved. So it's again yotzel lecheres shekiv mishli kofeise b'makom sheyesh l'chpeise. He didn't force him to go against his nether. B'makom sheyesh l'chpeise is gogila daite shivkia shibude. So memela. So again, so it comes out that anything that he does or says, which implies that he's not looking at him as an eved, so memela that's a gather of hefker. Memela he becomes hefker, and then he has then he tzara get shikhr. Mikan ani omer shamshachar avdei b'chol loshen v'hoitzi dvarim bepiv shemashmoin shelinishale of shibot klal. Even though he didn't say it clearly, but he said things which is mashma shelinishale of shibot klal v'shegomer belibi ledover zeh. So the din is, it says sheine, but it should say eine yochel asubei. So once a person says a lashon, which is the mashma shelinishal of shibut klal, so it's al derech he was mafker him, and memela eine yochel asubei. And v'koifenos he had a vav v'koifenos lichtev liget shichur afal pisha adayin likosov. Even though he didn't yet get shichur, but lepel yekofenos lichtev liget shichur. So in other words, if a person says something, that's basically these halachas that we're learning here. That if a person does something or says something, which the mashmois advarim is that he's looking at his eved as being a ben chayrin, so the din is so he is a ben chayrin. He can't say I changed my mind and I want him to be an eved. Once he says something, which the mashmois is that he's a ben chayrin, so he has a din of a ben chayrin, and then there's another din that is kefan they say, and he writes a star shikhr, even though he didn't write a star shikhr yet. But lepel yekofan they said to write a shtar shikhr, and until he writes a shtar shikhr, he already is considered free in the sense that he has no shibud from him. That's talking about all these cases, which is the Yisir Rabbi Baschedin, Yechli Rabbi Tfilin Bereishay. He was able to be made for nidre, and he said mufar l'chay. He didn't force him to go over his neder. All these dinim, which shows that he's looking at him as being someone which is a ben chayrin. Avadim love him. He borrowed money from his eved. An Eved Mehechetes that he has money, and the fact that he's borrowing money from the Eved seems like he's considering him a Ben Chayrin. Eshaso Apitrupis made him as someone in charge of his nechosim. Esheniach Tefillin b'fnei Rabbi, or the Eved was in Niach Tefillin b'fnei Rabbi. Eshekorish Shleishim Psukim b'Sakneses b'fnei Rabbi. He did it on his own. It's not that Rabbi was hikri. He did it on his own. V'lei Michabe. So all these things is le Yatzel Cheres. So notice the fact that an Odin borrows money from an Eved, the fact that he makes an apotrup is the fact that he lets him being putting on tefillin or being koyed psukim, that's not an indication that he's being moided, that he's a ben chayim. Halacha Yutes, Halikeach Eved min Agoy. So like we learned, that a goy, his kinyan in the Eved was only really a kinyan l'maisa yadav. He didn't really have a kinyan aguf. So when you go ahead and buy an Eved from a goy, so really what you also have only is what the goy had. The goy had a kinyan, a shibur on his Maisi Yadayim. Now you have a Shibur on his Maisi Yadayim. When you're going to go ahead and be matpil this goy l'shem avdus, so that's when he's going to become your Eved in the sense that he'll become gufi koni. But until then, he's not gufi koni. So be'etzem if he's going to go and he's going to be toivel l'shem gerus, this Eved, which is not really yours, you only have a shibur on him. You have a shibur on him for his Maisi Yodav, and he's going to go and be toivel l'shem avdus, l'shem gerus. So that Tefillah l'shem gerus is going to make him a ger, and that'll be mafkia, your shibur on him of his Maisi Yadayim. The Maisi Yadayim that you have a shibur on him will be nifka through the fact that he just became a ben chayrin. So therefore, halikeach eved min hagoy, a person that buys an eved from a goy, v'kodem ha'eved v'tovel b'fnei rabbi, he was able b'fnei rabbi, and the rabbi wasn't the one that was matpul him, he didn't take him and put him into the water, but rather the eved himself was tovel b'fnei rabbi, and l'shem ben chayrin, he did it l'shem ben chayrin, and it's brought down that the pashtus is l'shem ben chayrin, even if he didn't say clearly it's l'shem ben chayrin, the pashtus ben chayrin is yotzel l'chayris. However, shalei b'fnei rabbi, if he was toivel shalei b'fnei rabbi, so then it's tzarech l'farish, he has to say clearly he's being toivel l'shem ben chayrin. He's being toivel, he has to be toivel in front of a bezin to become a din of a ger. But on the other end, the tefillah, he has to say clearly that I'm not being toivel l'shem avdus, I'm being toivel l'shem gerus, is nachamol. When he does it l'fnei rabbi, and he does it on his own, the pashtus is that it's l'shem gerus. Masha'inkin of the shalei b'fnei rabbi, in order to have a din of gerus, it has to be tzarech l'farish. And lefichoch, if the rabbi wants to be toivel him and make sure that he's being toivel l'shem avdus, not l'shem gerus, is tzarech rabbi l'tokfei b'mayim. If the rabbi puts him into the water, so the pshat is the rabbi is being matpul him. The rabbi is being matpul him. So since the rabbi is being matpul him, so memela that tvila is l'shem avdus, not l'shem gerus, and that's when he becomes a full evet knaini. Now this thing the Rambam is saying is a lekech evet min hagoy. Person's lekech evet min hagoy. There's a goy owned him and he sold it to the Yisrael. So then at that point in time, the Yisrael only had a kinyan of a shibur on the Maisi Yodov, not on the guf, and therefore this evet still is in the position where he could become a regular ger through being toivel l'shem gerus. What happens if the evet sold himself? So B'chiyai Gavna is brought down because Mishnah says that in such a case you attack your kain the guf. Because when you say when you buy an evet from a goy, so you only had what the goy had. The goy had a kinyan of Maisi Yodav in the evet, so he was makna to you his kinyan. Masha'inkin, if a goy sells himself, there's a echatimsa buying an evet knaini that the goy sold himself, so then you're kaina his guf. You're not only kaina the Maisi Yodav, you're kaina his guf, and when you're kaina his guf, so then then he's no longer in the position to go ahead and be toivel l'shem gerus. At that point in time, you could be matbul in l'shem avdus, and if he's toivel, it's memela l'shem avdus. It can be a tefillah l'shem gerus because you already have a kinyan aguf in him. Halacha chaf. Yisrael shetokav goy cotton, a motzah tina goy, behidbilei l'shem ger. So the din is hareza ger. He has a din of a ger. So it's a chiddush. He grabbed the goy cotton, and lepel he became the owner of the goy cotton. So at this point in time, he could be matbul in l'shem ger. So now we learned before, l'mashal, if a person buys a goy, he buys a goy from a yid. He buys an eved from a goy. And now this eved doesn't want to be toivel l'shem avdus. So you can't go ahead and force him to be toivel l'shem avdus. So we said you wait for him 12 months, or if you made a t'nai, so then you could wait longer. But I'll call upon him, you can't be matbul him l'shem avdus because lepel, you don't have really that kinyan in him that entitles you to be matbul l'shem avdus. To be matbul l'shem avdus, it has to be on his own. All you have in him is only, as we said, a kinyan on his Maisi Yodav. You have a shibur on his Maisi Yodav, and lepel, if he'll be toivel l'shem avdus miritzaynoi, so then he's going to have a din of it, a full din of an evet knaini. But you can be matbul l'shem evet knaini. Masha'inkin over here, you're taking this goy cotton which you are toikif. Vices, you became an owner on him. It's like a certain kibush mulchama. There's a din that you became an owner on him through kibush, through takaf. So memela, you could be matbul him neged ritzayni. I should talk of goy cotton, a motzah tina goy. The hidbila l'shem ger is a reza ger. So you could be matbul l'shem ger because you become a bailam on him through the fact that it's gufi koni. That's like a chiddush, but that's what it says here. L'shem eved, if you want to be matbul him l'shem eved again, neged ritzayni has nothing to do with his ratzon. Is a reza eved. L'shem ben chayrin is Areza ben Chayrin. So it's not so clear what's the title L'Shem ben Chayrin. L'chura we said L'Shem Ger and L'Shem Evet. I mean, L'Shem ben Chayrin knows he should become a Goya ben Chayrin. L'chura you're being toikef him. Now you become an owner on him, and now you're being toivel him L'Shem ben Chayrin. So Be'emes, the Ram Ma'orach brings over here from the Rogat Shavar that the pshat is you were toikef him. So mainly you became an owner on his guf. Now normally how you become uis owner on his guf, there's a musig of ashtar shichr, there's a musig of to mishachar and eved, or there's a musig of kesef, that you give kesef to the yodin, and through that he becomes a meshucher. Here the Rogat Shavar is saying pshat in the Rambam that through the fact that the odin is being matbil, this person that he was koine kinyan aguf, so that's giving him a status of a ben chayrin as a goya ben chayrin, which is a dvar chidush. That's the Taish Hashem ben chayrin. Is anyway, but that's l'chura what it says in Rambam. Nachamol Yisrael should talk of goy cotton, a motzah tina goy cotton. V'idbilei l'shem ger, that is a ger. L'shem eved, that is a eved. L'shem ben chayrin. So the Rishavas Taish Hashem ben chayrin is to become a goya ben chayrin. Is also Areza ben chayrin. This tefillah is making him into a goy ben chayrin. Agam l'chura, how does tefillah make him into a goy ben chayrin? Tefillah could make him into an eved, a kinyan aguf on the odin. Mashenkin, so if he become a goya ben chayrin, how does he become ben chayrin through tefillah? But I'll call upon him, that's how the Rogat Shavar learns pshat in the Rambam. Halacha chaf aleph. Ger shekodmu avodah v'shevchesa v'tovlu lefanov is kanu atzmim lechayrin. The pashtus is the same thing, just like we learned that if you buy an eved from a goy, so lepel at that point in time, all you have is a kinyan on his ma'aseh yadav. All you have is a kinyan on his ma'aseh yadav, and at that point in time, this eved is in a position where he could be toivel l'shem ben chayrin. So the same thing over here, a ger. So he was a goy, and he owned Avadim Shvachas, and now he became a yid. So now he is really in the position where he's able to take these Avadim Shvachas and make them into an eved knaini. And those before, when he was a goy, he couldn't make them into eved knaini. All he had was a kinyan of a ma'aseh yadav. Mashenkin, now that he's a yid, he's in a position to make them into an eved knaini. But he has to make them into an eved knaini through being matbul them. So, however, if they went themselves and they were toivel l'shem ben chayrin, so just like if you buy an eved from a goy, so at that point in time, this eved could be toivel l'shem ben chayrin. So this ger is kilu, he got this eved from the goy. He was first a goy, now he's a yid. So now these avodim could go ahead and be toivel ben chayrin. Ger shekodmu avodim shevchesav v'tovlu lefanov is kanu atzman b'nei chayrin.